feel like I'm saying scallop a lot. It's weird. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 51 of the Hilo Stitch podcast. I'm your host, Kristen, and I'm here to talk to you about, what else? Knitting. I'll also be talking about all things knitting related and knitting adjacent, and maybe not so related and or adjacent. So if you don't know me already, my name is Kristen Janik. I am a knitting instructor, semi-retired knitting pattern designer, and an all-around knitting enthusiast. I am podcasting to you from my home in the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C., where I live with my husband, a tall man from Peru, my two little boys, JJ, who is almost 9, and Ollie, who is 7, our dog Thistle, our grumpy cat Dory, and our persistent fish Jenny. When I am not knitting, you can find me reading, baking, vegetable gardening, sewing, drinking wine, but it's mostly about the knitting, so let's go ahead and start talking about it. Let's jump right into on and off the needles. We just wrapped up Christmas, which means I should have some things off the needles as gifts, but I don't. I don't have much. I have one gift that I managed to finish for Christmas. I knit my sister a Lunita hat. This is a hat pattern that I published a couple of years ago. So I knit this in the original yarn called for in the pattern, which is Aslan, however you pronounce that. Nurtured, which is a heavy worsted or Aran weight, heathered wool blend that is beautiful. I love working with it. It's a little bit rustic. It's still plenty soft. Let's see. Do I know what color? Do I know what color I used? I don't. I no longer have the label. I might have a little leftover yarn. All right, so this is the yarn that is left from that project. I bought 2 skeins, and so I probably got about a half a skein left. And you can see this is a kind of a warm heathered gray with little blips of some other colors in there. She had asked me for a neutral colored hat, so I thought this was a good choice. And then I put that brown alpaca pom-pom on the top. So I finished this up right before Christmas. And she was the only person who got a knit gift on Christmas Day. I'm the best. I have been working on a gift for my dad, which is close to done. So I was working as well on a gift for my dad, which was pretty close to being done on Christmas, but not quite, and is still not finished. So if you watched the last episode, you'll remember that I had decided to knit my dad a bigger version of this shawl, which is a worsted weight brioche, 2-color, 3-color brioche shawl that I finished up for myself a couple of months ago. So I decided I was going to knit my dad one. I wanted it to be a little bit bigger. And so this is on its way. It's pretty big already. So I am using a dark blue, a dark gray, and a black on this one. I'm really happy with how the colors look. I think it's pretty, manly, or at the very least neutral. And then on the back, flip it over, and you can see how the colors are playing out here. So I did the main part of the shawl with the dark blue and the dark gray. And then this is what I consider the front. So let's go from there. Okay, so then when I had about a quarter of each of those 2 colors left, I changed my main color to the black. I finished up using the blue as the contrast color. Then I switched to the gray for the dark gray to the contrast color, and am nearly finished with that. And then once that is finished up, I will do this kind of last bit that you see here in the black, and this will be done. as I said, I wanted this shawl to be a little bit bigger than mine. So for this, I used Brooklyn tweed, tones, and shelter. And each of those, I did the math in the last episode, or maybe the one before that, and did a really poor job. Each of those is 140 yards. So this was, here we go again, 420 yards total, this one. So for this one, I'm using Knit Picks. High Desert worsted. So those balls are a little bit bigger. I don't remember off the top of my head what the size is, and I don't have any of the labels, but those are larger. I think their yardage is maybe closer to 200 each, so that this would end up being a bigger shawl. I had considered originally using the same yarn, but then I would have had about 2 skeins of each, and that would have been too much. So I am hoping to have this done to gift to him this coming weekend as a kind of New Year's present. So you can see this is all I have left of that dark gray. So that part is almost done, and then we switch to that this final piece at the bottom, which is just a one color half fisherman's rib. I am going to go ahead and make a pattern with this and hopefully publish that maybe in February. If you were interested in maybe testing it out, go ahead, leave a comment and let me know. So now this actually has gotten almost too big to fit in my little Christmassy project bag here. So that is going to become a pattern eventually. A lot of people, you know, I started putting these reels on Instagram, just kind of for fun. And like one of them really took off, and it has now like 100,000 views. So I've got a lot more followers on Instagram. Like a couple weeks ago, I hit 4,000 followers, and then I started doing these reels, and now I'm almost at 6,000 in just a couple of weeks. So I'm getting a lot more followers, and a lot more people have been commenting about the shawl. So I'm gonna release that as a pattern eventually. Other than that, the main thing that I have been working on is my mashup sweater. If you have seen past episodes, you will hopefully remember that I am doing this kind of sweater mashup between 2 of Melody Hoffman's patterns. So this is her Tulip pullover and her Offering of Trees pullover. So along the raglan lines, you've got this kind of braid cable. It's really pretty and subtle. And then at the bottom hem, you have these scalloped kind of, I guess that's why it's called tulip. It looks kind of flowery at the bottom. It's a scalloped hem. So I am down to the hem. And what I usually do when I'm doing projects that combine a yarn with a lace weight mohair or cereal packet is I'll leave the trims, the collar and the cuff and the hems, in just the plain yarn. So that's what I've done here, and you can kind of see the difference in the 2 colors. So I am down to the hem. The instructions say to knit 8 rounds and then start these scallops. But the instructions also say to stop knitting the body and start the hem when the sweater is 4 inches shorter than you want it to ultimately be. But 8 rounds of ribbing on a US 7 is just a tiny bit bigger than an inch, and the scalloping really only adds another inch. That's really only a 2-inch hem. So I'm not sure where the difference is there. So I had started on the scallops and then realized that the hem was just going to be way too narrow, and then the sweater wasn't going to be long enough. So I ripped out the one scallop I did and decided to add to the length on the bottom. So that is what I am working on now. You can see really the contrast here in these two colors. So this color is a Merlot, and this is the Merlot held with a brown, kind of tonal brown lace weight mohair and silk. So I'm going to add probably another inch worth of ribbing on the bottom and then do the scallops. The scallop is not, I feel like I'm saying scallop a lot. It's weird. The scallops are not too difficult. It's just working some short rows in combination with some strategic binding off. And then of course I have sleeves. The cuffs are plain. I guess I could make them scalloped as well, but that doesn't really interest me. So hopefully once that bit is done, the sleeves might move a little quicker and maybe I will have this sweater to wear. I was originally hoping to have it for Christmas and clearly that did not happen. Leading up to Christmas, I was really doing more sewing than knitting, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So I have really not made much progress on anything else that I have been working on, except for my new hat pattern that I'm going to tell you about in the next segment. All right, Adelante, talking about what is coming up in terms of patterns, and when you are watching this, I will either be about to or have just released a new hat pattern. So here it is. I had showed you guys the progress in the previous episode. This is now going to be called the Misse hat, M-I-S-S-E, and maybe in the next podcast I'll get into how I got around to that name. So this is a reversible brioche hat, and the two colors of the brioche are created by alternating between using just the DK weight yarn, which is used plain here, and holding it double with the lace weight, in this case alpaca, or you could also use silk mohair. So it has a has a foldable brim that on one side has this nice layer of that alpaca or mohair lace weight. And then on the other, it's just a plain 1x1 rib. Here you have the brioche. On this side, the knit columns are done with the DK weight held single. So that kind of stands out a little bit more. It's less fluffy. When you flip it over, the knit columns are with the DK weight held double with the lace yarn, and you can see it's just a little bit fluffier. So if you wear it with that side out, you will flip your brim up and have kind of a nice contrast between the fuzzier brioche rib here and the plain rib here. And the other way, you will have those fuzzier stitches to the outside. I'm sorry, the less fuzzy stitches to the outside, and then that nice fuzzy brim. So this pattern includes 4 sizes. It uses a skein of DK. So I used Coast to Coast Yarn Company Classic DK, and then it uses a ball of, again, the lace weight Surrey alpaca or mohair silk. And what I used for the original was Knit Picks Alpaca Bloom, which is now discontinued. But their Aloft would be an excellent substitute here. And it really doesn't use a ton of, I mean, it was like 164 yards in the ball this is the size small, and I had some left over. So if you actually have leftovers from a larger skein of silk, alpaca, mohair, silk, whatever, that might be a good choice for this. So the pattern has 4 sizes. and it is going to officially be dropping. It looks kind of nice like that. It will officially be dropping on January 3rd. If you're watching this episode as soon as it drops, then you can actually go ahead and pre-order the pattern. So the pre-orders are open now. You can pre-order it for $4, and then when it officially launches on January 3rd, it'll go right to your either your Ravelry library or your inbox if you prefer to buy on PayHip. And of course, when it actually drops, the price is going to go up. So you're going to get your best deal pre-ordering it now. This is so cozy. I love it so much. I'm not going to put it on because it's going to mess up my hair. But I will go ahead and throw a few photos in here. All right, so as I said, Misse hat dropping very soon. Super cozy, snuggly, and really very, very warm because brioche is already a thick stitch pattern, and then you have this double layered brim. So this is a really warm hat that is really going to carry you all the way through winter. And as I said, I am going to make this shawl into a pattern that is going to be coming up early in the winter, hopefully in February. I am also working on that long lost sweater pattern, but I really have not gotten very far with that. I'm hoping to make some good progress in January and really get that moving. It is coming, but I'm with everything with Christmas and such, I'm a little behind where I wanted to be, but it is coming. So you can keep a lookout for that as well. I also have a pattern that is going to be published relatively soon in February by Knit Picks. So I've got those 4 patterns all kind of coming up within the next 2 months, and that's all I have for now. We'll see where the knitting takes me, because of course I am technically retired, so it's really more of a hobby now, but we'll see what happens. So I will include links in the description box down below so you can pre-order your hat. I have just a little stash flash for you guys. However, I'm going to include some things here that I got for Christmas that aren't yarn, but still seems like a good place to throw them in as they are crafting related. So as far as actual yarn, I did a little bit of Small Business Saturday shopping and recently got one of the purchases I made, which is these 2 lovely skeins from Old Rusted Chair. These are obviously both sock yarn. Let's see, this one, get a little closer, don't get blown out, there we go. This one is called Panic in Detroit, and this one, which is sort of similar colors but a little grittier, is called Hipster Scum. I'm a sucker for fun colorway names. So as I said, I ordered these during her Small Business Saturday sale. They are both sock yarn, but I think they are 2 different bases. Yes, one is sock, which is a 2-ply fingering, and the other one is tough sock, which is a 4-ply fingering. And this one's 400 yards, and this one is 463 yards. This is definitely a thinner, and this one has a little bit more nylon. I absolutely love them both. I have no immediate plans for them. Although I am thinking about winding up this one and just casting on a pair of plain socks for myself in the very near future. If you watched the previous episode, you know what a failure my mystery socks were for 2021. And I kind of just want to get a nice pair of plain socks on the needles to maybe jumpstart my sock knitting mojo. I'm not big into sock knitting in the sense that I really especially like knitting socks, but I really like having hand knit socks. They're so much better. And since I don't have anybody that's going to make them for me, I kind of have to do it myself. So that is the only new yarn that has come into my stash recently. On Small Business Saturday, I did also make a purchase from Lola Bean Yarn Company, and I think that's expected to ship out in early January, so pre-ordering. And again, I'm not in a rush. I don't have any immediate plans for any of this, so I know she has gotten some irate emails from people wondering where their yarn is because they didn't read the listing and see that it was a pre-order and blah blah blah. Don't do that to these indie dyers who you know, they are working hard and it's a busy time of year, and make sure you read what it is you're buying before you spend your money. And you know, let's be really honest, I sincerely doubt that any of us are in desperate need of yarn immediately. So, you know, let them do their work, and you know, the yarn will arrive and it'll be like a special surprise when it comes in your mailbox because you'll have forgotten about it, and then you can do what you will with it. So that's the only yarn, I think. I did not get any yarn for Christmas. I did have some yarn on my wish list that I might just go ahead and buy myself, because I really want to try to, again, knit from, maybe not knit from stash only, but to really make some progress on my stash and to kind of set up a situation where I'm not buying more yarn until I'm using a certain amount of yarn for 2022. Somehow that's the year that's coming. But I kind of want to get that that in my stash before I do that. Originally, my plan was to say in 2022, I'm not going to buy any yarn unless I buy it at Maryland Sheep and Wool or Rhinebeck. But the COVID is so totally out of control again that you know, are those events even going to happen? I have no idea. It's really frustrating. I am really frustrated now with the situation that we're in with the COVID that was, I'm not going to say completely unavoidable, but could have been so much better had people just gotten vaccinated when they were allowed to. It's infuriating. I'm not going to get into that too much. So I don't know, or I can't be sure that any of those in-person events are going to take place in 2022. So now I'm going to try to, you know, do some yarn in, yarn out arrangement, so I'm not buying too much yarn. I didn't do too bad in 2021, but I really do want to work through some stash. But I did get some other kind of yarn and crafting related things for Christmas. So one of those is a new pair of fabric shears. I just bought kind of when I started, you know, I just started sewing in May. So I just bought kind of the cheapest fabric shears I could find. I didn't know if it was something I was going to stick with. But now that it seems to be holding pretty steady, I thought it'd be nice to get a nice quality pair. And these aren't like crazy expensive or anything. I think they were like, I don't know, 25 or 30 bucks. So more than most people would spend on scissors, but in the grand scheme of crafting tools, not a huge amount. So these are by, I don't know if that's pronounced Ginger or what. These were, I did a Google search for like best fabric shears, and this was, came up a couple of times on different crafting websites lists. So that's what I put on my wish list, and that's what I got. And then I also got, a friend of mine told me about these. I don't know if I'm getting old or my vision is getting worse or both. I do know I need better lighting by my sewing machine. But especially if I am sewing at night, I've been having a little bit of difficulty seeing. So my friend told me about these, which are lights that kind of blown out there, go around sort of the inside area of the sewing machine so you can see better. And obviously I have not set them up yet. I don't even know how they work. Let's see. Well, let's see. This is a little disconcerting. It says that they have a loing power cord. I don't know if you can see that. Loing. A long power cord, so presumably they plug in. USB adapter, adhesive cord clips, etc. So I guess everything is in here that I need to kind of set them up on my sewing machine and maybe be able to see a little better. And then the last thing I got was a copy of the Embody Capsule Collection. This is by Jacqueline Cieslak. I don't want to guess really, but to the best of my knowledge, Cieslak, who is very famous for her Ursa and Ursina sweater patterns and overall her size inclusive designing. So this includes a very comprehensive sweater pattern that has instructions for kind of making it short sleeve, long sleeve, a vest, a cardigan, a pullover, sort of, it's a very basic sweater, but all of those options are included, which, you know, if you're an experienced knitter, making those changes to a very basic sweater pattern isn't necessarily difficult, but it can be time consuming and involves some trial and error. And so having all of that here all together is great. And then it includes a shawl pattern. And then lastly, it has, again, a really comprehensive pattern for a picture here for this, but this can be a dress, a top, a sleeveless. It can be sleeveless, it can have long sleeves, it can have short sleeves. So again, just one pattern, but all of these different options built right in. Okay, so here's like the sleeveless version of it with a waist tie. Here's a kind of sleeveless tunic version. So, you know, and even just this little like kind of cropped short sleeve version. So again, just a really very comprehensive pattern that can make a whole bunch of kind of basic garments from just one pattern. So what I would need to do before I can use the sewing pattern part is to have the pattern pieces for cutting your fabric printed out. I haven't really looked into it. I know they're in here and there's a download code in here, and I don't know if they are meant to be print at home, which is something with a lot of digital sewing patterns, or if they have the print shop pieces or versions of those. Hopefully, because I really have not been doing a lot of print at home for my sewing patterns, because it just makes me really neurotic trying to piece all the pages together, and it's relatively inexpensive to just have them printed for me. But those are all of the little gifties that I got that were related to crafting under the Christmas tree this year, as well as a little yarn stash flash. And so as I said, in the lead up to Christmas, I was actually doing quite a bit of sewing. I ended up sewing myself a dress for Christmas Eve and a pair of pants for Christmas Day. That actually, those two things got reversed. So originally I was going to, or I wanted to make myself a Christmas Eve dress, because we go to church on Christmas Eve every year, and every year I cannot figure out what to wear. And the weather is always, either it's freezing or it's like 80 degrees and there's no in between. So I found a pattern for a pinafore, which is, again, kind of like a dress that is sleeveless and designed to be layered over other things. You can also wear it alone. I went ahead and purchased that, and I bought the fabric for it, which was this nice red and green tartan. And then I started reading the pattern and realized that the dress was actually lined. So I then had to order some lining fabric. So I didn't get started on the dress quite as early as I wanted to. And then once I got started, this was indicated as a beginner's pattern. And maybe like the actual skills used in it were relatively beginner, but the instructions were not. I had to end up doing a lot of kind of Googling and trying to figure out what on earth I was supposed to be doing, especially for the pockets. So I will go ahead and pop a photo in here. So this pattern is called the Danny Pinafore from Seamwork, and this I think is the third Seamwork pattern that I've done, and all of them were called beginner, and this was the only one that I had difficulty with. I know it's one of their older patterns, so maybe that was why. Ultimately, I did end up finishing it in time to wear for Christmas Eve, but we ended up not going to church on Christmas Eve because the COVID was just, I think on actual Christmas Eve, the positivity rate was like 15%, and standing in a crowded room with a bunch of strangers singing for an hour just seemed like a poor idea. You know, we're all vaccinated and boosted and the kids are vaccinated, but it just seemed too risky. So we ended up not going to church. So I decided I was going to wear my dress on Christmas Day instead, because the high on Christmas Day was supposed to be 65, and it's a sleeveless dress, so that is what I did. And then on Christmas Eve, I ended up wearing the pants that I had recently finished. So these are not specifically for Christmas, like the dress. There's really not a whole lot of other occasions I can wear a red and green tartan dress than Christmas. But the pants, I wanted to finish in time to wear for Christmas, but they can be worn for all kinds of things. So the dress is still in the wash, but the pants are not. So I will actually go ahead and pop a photo in here. So that's what they look like on. And now you can see up close this beautiful velveteen fabric. So this pattern is the Pietra Pants by Closet Core Patterns, and the pattern actually includes shorts, wide leg pants, and then straight leg pants. So these are the wide leg pants that I made. And for this I used a velveteen, I don't remember from whom. And these are the first real pants I've made. I did make the boys some Christmas pajama pants, but those are much, much easier. So these pants have plenty of mistakes. For starters, you can see they have this nice elastic waistband in the back, but you can see that my front and back waistbands don't line up. So that was not great. I mean, nobody's really gonna see it. So this was a challenge. There were a lot of kind of moving parts here. They do have pockets, and they're nice big pockets. And you can see they have this seam down the front of each leg, and that's a real seam. You know, I think in the early 2000s, there was kind of a trend where that seam down the front of the pants was fashionable, but a lot of times in like cheap clothing, it was just fake. They would kind of sew a couple of lines of stitching down the front to make a fake seam, but this is real. So has a real seam down the front of each leg, you can see here. And then they've got a nice wide cuff. I cuffed these to a length so that I could wear them with heels. And then there are no pockets on the back, which I don't know how I feel about that. These are kind of loose fitting, so I guess it's okay. But in general, I like having back pockets as well. So I'm really happy with these. Despite the many mistakes, they turned out well, they fit well, and none of the mistakes are such that it really, it doesn't impact the fit or it doesn't impact the final look of anything. So it was really quite a challenge to seam up the crotch and inseam and get everything to line up. I don't know if, got some threads here. I don't know if I am not cutting my pattern pieces correctly, or maybe I'm not getting my seam allowances accurate enough, but I always seem to have a little bit of trouble matching up pattern pieces that should match up. So I don't know, some of my pieces are coming out too big or too small, or my seam allowances are off, and so the pieces end up the incorrect size. So that was a little tricky, but it got done. And I am looking forward to many occasions to wear these very comfortable, slightly shiny pants. And that is all of the sewing I have done in December. I don't have any sewing projects on the horizon right now. Like I said, I did a lot in December trying to finish up both of those things for Christmas. I do have a couple more projects planned, but I haven't made, any movement to get going on them. One of them is a dress that the fabric I bought for it is pretty thin, and I think I probably will just wait until a little bit closer to spring to do that. It would have been an okay dress for kind of early fall where it was not too chilly, but at this point it's a very thin fabric and a light dress, and it's going to be more appropriate for spring. I've got fabric for a pair of overalls, so I'm not sure if I'm ready to get started on that. And I've also got fabric for a kind of like nice little date night top. I think that might be the next thing I do. I did have a pattern printed, just kind of a black textured fabric. I think it would be cute for kind of a date night, slightly dressy top. I'm certainly not making anything for New Year's Eve. We are not going anywhere. We are not doing anything. Maybe my dad might come over. I'm gonna cook a nice dinner, and yeah, we are, not that we ever go out because we have kids, but definitely not going anywhere this year. So I don't need any kind of special clothes for that. And I have a bit more fabric for a couple of projects, but I just haven't narrowed anything down yet. And I think with kind of it being winter, cold weather coming, I will hopefully maybe be a little bit more focused right now on finishing up some sweaters instead of the sewing, which is, sewing, I guess, is, more seasonless. There's plenty of things to sew in spring and summer. So it's nice to kind of focus on the knitwear for the winter. So that is all the sewing that I have to show you in this episode. All right, so many of us have made it through 2021, just about. Far too many people around the world did not make it through 2021. It was quite a year. It was not an easy year. It was a very tiring year for me. I don't know about you. And I don't know, it's very hard to feel any kind of hope for 2022 with the way things are going. But I hope that you have had a nice holiday season with your family, and were able to stay safe and healthy and COVID-free. We had just a kind of a small Christmas that we've done the last few years. So Christmas Eve, we went over to my dad's house. My sister cooked dinner. Santa came to visit. And then Christmas Day, everyone came over to our house. Unfortunately, Ollie managed to get some kind of stomach bug. Sort of started feeling pukey right after we finished opening gifts, and then just kind of on and off throughout the day. Was vomiting. No fever. Like his fever went up for or his temperature went up for a couple of hours, and that was it. So no other symptoms, really, just puking, and he was fine the next day. So by I think 8:30 on Christmas night, he had gone through several outfits for the day. He was clearly tired. I knew he wasn't going to stay and sleep and by himself, and I didn't really want him, he usually sleeps on a mattress on his brother's floor, and I didn't want him in there in case he was going to get sick again. So I just said, all right, I will just sleep with him in the guest room bed. So after vomiting on the bed one last time, which we had to clean up, he fell right asleep. He slept until 2:30 in the morning. He woke me up and said he was hungry. I gave him some crackers and some water, and then he went back to sleep until 7, and was fine. I mean, he still seemed a little tired, but no more vomiting. I don't know what happened to him. No one else is sick. No one else has had, any similar symptoms. Nothing. It's just like this very random, wasn't even 24 hours. I don't know why these things happened to him. So that was not exactly the Christmas I was hoping for, but we still did our best in the circumstances, and since then I've just been at home relaxing. I am currently translating a novel, and so I have been trying to work on that. It's a little tricky with the kids at home. My husband is also still doing some work, so that is something I should be finishing up in January. So I'm really trying to get some work done this week, so I'm not rushing in January, but so that I can also kind of take the day off on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. We shall see how that works. I really only have, the way I'm doing it is, I'm doing just kind of like a rough pass first and translating it all into a very rough English. And then I'm going to kind of go back and refine it so that it's actually well written. So I'm almost done that first kind of rough translation, which is the hardest part. I've only got like 12 more pages to go. And then I think the next part will be a little easier for me in that it's more writing in English than it is translating. So that is what I have been working on. And I have no idea if the kids are actually going to be able to go back to school. They should be going back on Monday. I will not be surprised if they go virtual, at least for a few weeks, to just give people a chance to get over whatever bugs they picked up, with Christmas and the New Year and traveling. My husband went to Peru the week before Christmas. His brother was getting married, or his brother was already married earlier in the year, but this was their big church wedding. Why this had to happen in a pandemic, I don't know. But that's not really my business. So they set the date for, I guess it was the 17th or the 18th. So my husband had decided, a couple of months ago that he would go, assuming things weren't terrible with COVID. But at that time, the kids had not been vaccinated, and we didn't know if they would be able to be fully vaccinated by then. So we decided I would stay home with the kids. So he was in Peru for about a week. And I was here with the kids, working, doing all the Christmas stuff. It was not ideal. And then on his way home, so he left like at night and had a connecting flight from like Fort Lauderdale or something at 7:30 the next morning, but because of all the customs, security, etc., he missed his connecting flight. He was flying Spirit Airlines, which was clearly a terrible idea. So they only had 2 flights a day back to the DC area, one at 7:30 that he missed, and the other one at 7:30 p.m., which was booked. So they said they could put him on the 7:30 a.m. the next day, but because, whatever the delay supposedly wasn't their fault, they wouldn't pay for a hotel room. So he decided to have them rebook him on a flight from Orlando, and then he drove from Fort Lauderdale to Orlando, paying for a rental car, which basically ate up all the money he had saved by flying this crap airline. He was at a friend's house for a few hours, and then was on a 9:30 flight from Orlando, so he finally got home like 1 in the morning. He had to be tested a whole bunch. He did manage to catch a cold in Peru, but not COVID. He was tested several times, thank God. And that was really the biggest adventure that has happened in our house recently. He did bring back lots of Peruvian candy and coca tea for me, so that is lovely. One big thing I am looking forward to in January is Yoga with Adrienne's 30 Days of Yoga. So I have been practicing at home yoga consistently for probably 4 years now. Yeah, sounds right. And every year I do her 30 days of yoga. So every year it's in January. It's a full calendar of yoga practices for 30 days. So not January 1st, presumably because everybody's hungover and they don't want to do yoga. So it kicks off really on January 2nd. There's a practice every day. Most of them are about 30 minutes, but some are a little bit shorter. So I've been doing this every year, and it really is, January is my absolute least favorite month of the year. So it really helps make it a little bit more pleasant. I like that it's something nice to look forward to. Something, I can kind of do in the privacy of my own home. I don't have to worry about going out. And it's, like I said, it's all new practices, so it doesn't feel like repetitive at all. It feels very fresh, which is nice for January. So if you are interested in joining that, I will put a link in the description box down below, so you can check that out. It is completely free. She has the vast majority of her yoga stuff is on YouTube, and it is free. She does have her own site, which is called Find What Feels Good, which has some exclusive practices and things, and that runs about, I want to say $10 a month. I do subscribe to that because I love her stuff, and I love using the app because it really organizes all of her different practices. It makes it really easy to go through, but it's absolutely not necessary. You can just follow along on YouTube perfectly fine and do it all for free. So like I said, I will include that link down below. And I think that is quite enough chatter to finish out the year. I hope you all have a wonderful new year. I will be back in, I guess, early January, and I'm still dithering about whether or not I'm going to make 9. So if I decide to, I will be talking about that in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 51 of the Hilo Stitch podcast. Links to everything that I have talked about can be found in the show notes at mediaperuana.com/Hilo-Stitch. Special thank you to my Patreon patrons whose support helps keep the podcast and the whole Media Peruana Knits channel up and running. If you are interested in supporting the podcast and getting kind of perks and freebies and behind the scenes goodies, you can find more information at patreon.com/mediaperuana. Here on YouTube, if you can like, subscribe, leave a comment, share with a friend, all those things that will help expand the reach of not just the podcast, but the whole channel, which is full of free knitting tutorials and other goodies. If you are looking for me on social media, you can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Media Peruana, and I will see you next time.